All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mindgasms. So, I'm talking with Woke Centrist, aka the Conspiracentrist, aka Dusty Cubes, and Tubin, aka CJ, aka Chris James. And we're going to talk about conspiracy theories. Are conspiracy theorists right or as wrong as ever? And talk about whether the cultural attitude towards conspiracy theories has changed, like you were talking about, Chris, and whether I was thinking about, whether what your opinion is about that depends on your political persuasion and your beliefs about a whole other variety of issues, like vaccines is a big one lately, of course, and all this RFK Jr. stuff. So um, since you suggested this topic, Chris, why don't you start off with like what your opinion is about conspiracy theories in general in our culture, and how that has to do with politics, or whether the mindset has changed.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Originally I brought up this topic because I saw the 1994 Mel Gibson Julia Roberts
Right.
movie Conspiracy Theorist, and in that Mel Gibson kind of plays like, what's kind of funny is he plays kind of like a Robert Kennedy Jr. S type
Yeah,
character,
or
right?
Alex Jones or someone like
Or
that. Yeah.
Alex Jones. So it's kind
Yeah.
of perfect that RFK Jr. is kind of in the spotlight right now because it's yeah, and I was just kind of like, as I watched that movie, I was just kind of thinking to myself, does this still kind of stand up? Because back then, when you watched that movie in the '90s, it was like, oh yeah, the conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, and those still kind of feelings apply to some conspiracy theorists, depending on how you view, Alex Jones and all that kind of stuff. I just kind of was more curious as to the information age that we live in now is a lot different than even the 1990s.
Oh
And
yeah.
some conspiracy theories, like Gulf of Tonkin, for example, have been proven true over the last couple of years, right? So, and there's a bunch of stuff, vaccines or whatever, Iraq War, September 11th, you name it. There's a whole list of conspiracy theories you can go down the rabbit hole with. I just that guy that's crazy, that Mel Gibson, that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Although I don't know. There's so much going on with that guy. There's some stuff that I'm like, okay, I kind of agree with that, and then there's some stuff that I just don't agree with him at all. But
We
we're
should talk about that.
yeah, we can, and we're just gonna round third base and head home and close up my opening statement here. Yeah, where I kind of was just kind of thought would be an interesting topic for us to discuss is that 90s conspiracy theorist, that Alex Jones, that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Yeah, they're speaking a lot of shit, but is it, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. For me, like, a guy like that in the 90s might have been viewed before the internet, right? Keep in mind there's no internet. In the 90s, 94, if a guy like Alex Jones comes along, I'm thinking like, this guy is 99% of what he says is complete bullshit. Now these days, I would put that at maybe 80% is what he says is complete bullshit, right? And I'll give you an example like
Yeah, I
um,
agree.
the Bohemian Grove, right? For Alex Jones, right?
Mm.
You can say that he was wrong on Sandy Hook. You could say he was wrong on everything else, but he was right on the Bohemian Grove incident, right? So even
Hmm.
there's some stuff that over time, as more information gets, and the internet has helped with this a lot. That conspiracy theorist that was once viewed as kind of wacko, is he really still viewed as 100% wacko, or is he kind of a toned down version of that? That's what I was kind of,
I think it definitely depends on the person, and we should get into comparing these different figures too. But yeah, I mean, and like I was said, it depends on your political persuasion, and like, for example, what you believe about vaccines. Like RFK Jr., even though he's a Democrat, he has a lot of per, uh, support from right wingers, because you're more likely to be vaccine hesitant or vaccine denier or whatever if you're a right winger. And then it depends. There are degrees of different stuff like that. Like Alex Jones seems like the craziest, and then people like Brett Weinstein or James Lindsay, like I've criticized them before for having some conspiratorial beliefs, but they're not as crazy as Alex Jones in particular, for sure.
Yeah, and just side note there, I'm not a big fan of like Alex Jones and RFK Jr. as like the, you know what I mean? I know they're the poster child for RFK or for conspiracy theorists in this kind of, you know what I mean, context, but they're like the worst examples. You know what I mean? They're like the super hyperbolic, like the kowtowing to the lowest common denominator always, you know, guy, you know what I mean? And that is only really popular because, well, RFK Jr. is really only because he has Kennedy behind his name, I would argue. And Alex Jones has been in the media forever, so that's why he's well known or a household name. But I mean, there's a lot of other people out there that are, you know what I mean? Like a Dave Smith, for example, right? If you were to go back in the 90s and hear Dave Smith talking as he talks today, you would say he was a complete conspiracy theorist. And sure, I don't agree with 100% with what Dave Smith says these days on his podcast. And I'm not a libertarian myself, but I don't really think he's like, as far as his finger on the pulse of as to what is happening in reality these days in 2023 is a lot closer to than what mainstream media is pumping out. You know what I mean? I would consider mainstream media more compromised and more total conspiracy theories these days than podcasters. And
Okay.
I know that's a very broad statement, and there's, you know, both can be true. Mainstream media is a lot more correct on a bunch of shit than podcasters can be, right? Two things could be true at once. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that our faith in institutions, especially mainstream media, news, all that kind of stuff, has significantly dropped over at least the past 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that conspiracy theory is, you know what I mean? It's just they require a second look now, as to not be as much ignored as they once were.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. We should talk about that more too, because I think that like you were saying, I'm not a fan of the mainstream media either, but I think people kind of make the mistake of assuming that the alternative media, like podcasters like Dave Smith, they're more likely to be true, even though, like you were saying, also they can sometimes have stuff even more wrong than the mainstream media. But also too, like, yeah, it's definitely true that trust in institutions has eroded, and that's related to social media too, driving people towards more political tribalism and believing more extreme views and being more likely to believe conspiracy theories and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm
Uh,
not saying alternative media is like you shouldn't believe them over mainstream. Like, I'm just saying that they both have a tendency to you know, expand the narrative, not be correct all the time, you know, do whatever they can to get clickbaits. Just
yeah.
be mindful and do your own research is what I would
Hmm.
always suggest with any of those kind
And
of things. I
like
just don't throw the
and
baby out with the
and
bathwater.
also true, like some people, I know you actually mean that, and I tend to actually mean that when I say it too, do your own research, but then some conspiracy theorists will say do your own research, knowing that their audience will not actually do research.
Yeah, like
Well, for
RFK
them,
Jr. for
doing their
me.
own research doesn't actually mean looking at studies. It just
Yeah.
means looking up crackpot theories from wherever on the internet. You know, the people who say do your research, I rarely hear them pointing to a specific study to cite. It's usually, you know, oh, just type this on Google and see what comes up. You
Yeah.
know, whether
Oh,
the result is credible or not credible.
Yeah.
what I mean
Yeah,
by
for sure.
when I say, sorry, what I should be more specific. When I say do your own research, for me, and this should apply to everybody, I think these days, but don't just look at a left and a right bias on one media. Look at both, see where they both align truthfully on both sides, and then take that out of that. You know what I mean? I don't know. Just be open minded and not like, when I say do your own research, I don't mean just go to CNN, use them as an example, and then their
Right.
gospel and whatever they say. You know what I mean? I mean, like, see what CNN's saying, see what Fox is saying, see what Twitter's saying, see what Facebook's saying, see what your buddies are saying,
Right,
see
right.
what your Republican buddies saying, see what your left wing Democrat buddy is saying. You know what I mean? You got to get certain different viewpoints on all that stuff, and then come up with your own. Yeah, no, don't just go with whatever the first headline is on Google, because that's not a good.
Like that Bruce Lee maxim: take what is useful, ignore what is not, and make it uniquely your own, right?
I know one of the instances in which I think another important thing is to also slow your roll, meaning don't jump to the quickest conclusion that you can.
And a lot of
you have to let these events just play out and kind of get facts as they trickle in. I know one instance, and I saw this like literally unfold in the way that I thought it was going to unfold, was like it broke on Twitter, and it was like some boy with a MAGA hat, and he was in Washington DC, and there was like some confrontation, and everybody thought it was a kid. I was like, you know what? We don't have enough video to know what happened here, so I don't know why everyone's jumping on this kid already. And I just kind of waited and was like, I don't know what's going on in this video yet. And then somebody finally released like the whole stream. I was like, it's kind of a nothing burger. They attributed things to this short clip that just didn't happen at all. And to be honest,
was that the Covington kids thing?
Right. Like, to be honest, there was no real confrontation there. It was just, there was a clip and people created a narrative that there was a confrontation.
Oh, okay.
And because
I'm sure that happens a lot, man.
Yeah, it defamed his character and he was able to sue for it.
Right.
This is something that happens with quick breaking news and Twitter shit. This is mostly when people post clips on Twitter, like, oh, look what Antifa did, and it's like a 10-second clip with somebody reacting to something, and we don't even know what it was that they were reacting to. So you just kind of have to say, I'm not sure if this initial narrative is correct. I need more information.
Yeah, definitely. So, so what do you think, Dusty, about what we were saying about in terms of, conspiracy theorists, in terms of perhaps shifting political mindset and your political persuasion, and in comparison to mainstream media, and how easy it is to tell people, I don't want to say misinformation because that word itself is too politically polarized, but bullshit, basically.
Well, yeah, my whole thing about it is once you make too many mistakes as like a media personality, you just kind of lost credibility with me, even if you're now telling the truth occasionally. So that's just me personally. So if we have some guy that starts getting conspiratorial, I'm not going to listen to any shit he says from then on out. Because half the shit might be true, and I don't feel like I need to do extra work just to find out if it's true or not. And the problem with people just coming up with these conspiracy theories, it takes so much time and effort just to figure out what they're saying is full of shit.
Yeah, it takes way more effort to debunk what they're saying than it does to just say anything, right?
Right, it does take a lot of time and effort. Like, this is the problem with dealing some of these folks who don't give a shit if they throw something out there that is extremely poorly researched, and especially the ones that don't take it back. The ones that threw something out there and they're like, oh, my bad, this is complete bullshit, blah 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 blah. A lot of them don't do that.
Yeah, they double down or triple down or whatever.
Right. So to me, I really have to try to find the people that just present facts and not try to weave theories out of these facts. I'm just saying, this is what's going on here. And I'm not going to try to craft a theory because, one, the information I have may or may not support the theory, but I want to be as factual as possible when I'm presenting this information. And it just takes too much work. And then people, like, to be honest, are just people who don't care about having to do that work. Like, even when people say true shit, I still have to go and figure out what they say is true. Honestly, it is exhausting having to fact check facts that are even true.
Yeah. And the problem too is like people believe all these influencers like YouTubers and people like that, like RFK Jr. and Alex Jones and Brett Weinstein and James Lindsay. They just believe them without question, without actually even researching what they say. And so they'll believe whatever they say. So for example, there are conspiracy theorists that have been debunked years ago, like RFK Jr. saying that vaccines cause autism and there's no link between HIV and AIDS, and 5G gives you cancer and shit like that.
Well, at least that's the thing too about the difference between those who are in the news media versus those people who are just like entertainment pundits. News people have more legal responsibilities. So if they say something that's not factual, they have to kind of correct the record, because it's easier to defame somebody when you're posing as a news outlet versus somebody who's just giving their opinion about something.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're just giving your opinion about something, you can say almost anything and get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're presenting something as news and facts, you can't do that. Like, if you do, you're going to get your ass sued, basically.
Yeah.
So,
well,
like,
that's
all the people
why
who tend to get sued are the ones that I know there's Alex Jones, and he got sued. He's like a special case.
The Sandy Hook stuff. That doesn't happen with like YouTubers often, or people.
Well, it's because of how big Alex Jones is, and he is directly like responsible for his audience going out and harassing these people based off of false information.
Right.
And I believe he touts his show as a news show. So
tells people the truth, man. The unfiltered truth. He has the documents.
It's basically the bigger you are, the more of a target you are for litigation. And Alex Jones had, until his downfall where he got kicked off of everything, he was pretty big, like a household name, So I don't know. It's hard to believe, nobody YouTubers. Like, one of the things I will commend about Alex Jones and the times he was right, like, for instance, Bohemian Grove.
Right.
He was actually on site doing investigative journalism.
I don't know if it's still on YouTube, but I remember years ago I watched his documentary about Bohemian Grove and him walking through the forest and seeing all these rich and powerful people doing these insane rituals with like a mock child sacrifice and shit like that.
Right. So he would go to these sites and interview people and try to arrive at the truth by investigating. He doesn't do that anymore, obviously. There's a number of people that I followed who would do these types of investigations and reporting, but a lot of them got rich and lazy and just kind of talk shit from a soapbox.
That's Tim Pool's a good example of that, right?
Yeah, he used to be like a reporter and do investigative journalism, and all he does is sit in his compound and pretend he's like a political philosopher or something.
He's just a chill skateboarder dude, man.
Sure. But yeah, it's really hard. I know a lot of people crack on the mainstream media, mainstream media, doesn't matter what side it is, will have some type of political agenda unless you are even network news, local network news. They do have to rely on advertisements and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they're probably less likely to report on the people that fund their operations, even though it's not a single source. But I like to rely on local news for things because there's less fingers in the soup. It's modestly funded. There's not millions and millions of dollars going into my local news station. Like, these people are getting paid like normal humans. They're making 60 grand a year. They're not making millions and millions of dollars being newscasters.
Right. Yeah.
And these are like the people that I trust because
Mm-hmm.
they don't live in like $10 million homes or anything. They're like regular people.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you and you should do research, obviously, based on whatever topic it is. Like, if you're talking about Russia and Ukraine, you should probably listen to what some foreign policy experts are saying, like across different political persuasions, like you were saying, Chris. And in terms of the vid-19 or the Decepticons, I think that people like I was saying, that depends a lot on your political persuasion too. And I think a lot of people are just not doing research into scientific papers about this shit too.
Right.
Well, it's hard to, like, again, some of those scientific papers that you research these days, they've been compromised too, right? So it's hard to know
the scientific,
where you get your facts from.
Yeah, like some people, like they don't read the scientific papers, and then sometimes some scientific papers are compromised or they get retracted or something like that, and people know or people don't know, or sometimes they can be compromised, or sometimes people can also say that they're compromised just as a way of dismissing any evidence about what they say. Yeah, it gets really complicated, of course.
Usually the papers that are compromised are typically known to be compromised, at least amongst like scientists who peer review things.
Like that
might not be apparent to a lot of people, but I remember Jordan Peterson was like citing a bunch of studies that weren't even like real studies.
Was that the ivermectin stuff?
Yeah, he was like citing an abstract that was from a conference proposal. It wasn't even a study.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so stuff like that. And the guy should know better. He's a PhD. I'm pretty sure he's had to read many studies. And participate in studies.
So
I don't know.
So Chris, you mentioned earlier that there are like higher caliber conspiracy theorists than people like Alex Jones and RFK Jr., who are more correct about what they say, like not as extreme. So who are some of those people? Because I think it'd be interesting to compare some of these different people.
Yeah. I just know I always know that RFK Jr. and Alex Jones are always going to, whenever conspiracy theories are talked about, it's always their names, which is totally fine. I feel like they're like the lowest common, I just feel like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of people out there that tout conspiracy theory. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. But like the UFO stuff that's going on, for example, right? So Commander Favor, that was on Joe Rogan's podcast, he would be considered a conspiracy theorist because he apparently saw UFOs in the sky or whatever he saw. Now this guy is accredited Air Force pilot, got all the medallions on his shirt and all that kind of stuff. Those are the kind of guys that I'm more interested in, like that kind of conspiracy theory. So that guy says, I saw this, which I don't believe shit until I actually see an alien in front of my face. And I don't know, the alien topic, we can go on for an hour or two just on that alone.
Yeah.
That's a deep one, right? But I just, those are the kind of conspiracy theories that I look like and question. And Alex Jones, RFK Jr., for example, that kind of, the bullshit that they spouse out of their mouths I'm not really interested, to be honest. I know it's kind of bullshit, and I just it goes through my mind, and I'm passive with it. What I'm more interested about those guys is I'm interested in kind of like the epistemology, how they know what they know, and more are looking towards them. Why are these guys so popular? Why is Alex Jones a household name? Why is RFK Jr. now a household name? Why are people trying to silence him? Why is Andrew Tate a household name? You know what I mean? Why is this Pearl Davis girl a household name? Why are these people a household names? They're fucking not the brightest and sharpest knives in the drawer by any stretch of the imagination.
Wait, who was the last one you mentioned? I haven't heard of that one.
You haven't heard of Pearl Davis yet?
No.
Okay. Anyway, she's probably gonna be the next one. She's like the female version of Andrew Tate, pretty much.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, she was on.
She was on between her and Ethan, and he kind of wiped the floor with her.
Yeah, and she's been on Piers Morgan. She went viral after that, and but that like I don't like. I'm not interested in what they're talking about necessarily. I'm interested, why are these people becoming as popular as they are? Why are they, like Pearl Davis, for example? You guys haven't heard of her, but if you look her on YouTube, she has 2 million subscribers.
Oh,
how
wow.
does she get 2 million subscribers? You know what I mean? Like, I just don't understand, why is there such a I don't know.
What's the appeal? Why is there such an appeal for them? Yeah.
What's the appeal? And once these people get to be as popular as they are, like RFK Jr., for example,
I feel
he's everywhere.
Yeah.
They tend to appeal to incels, in my opinion.
That's true. That might be true. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So internet culture.
Yeah. Well, but, it's just like I'm thinking of who these people speak to. Tate and what's that other guy, Sneeko, and the Just Pearly thing. That's her name, right?
Yeah, that's her name. Yeah, that's her. Fuentes is another one. These guys that are just like these guys are kind of clownish to me, and I'm not really interested in what they spouse, like topic, what their substance is, and what they're saying. I'm more interested about that cloud around them. Like, why are these people popular? Why are people trying to cancel them? I find that interesting, right? Like RFK Jr. Like, why are people on Senate trying to dismiss what he has to say? I know it's bullshit, but if he is bullshit, let the public opinion, you know what I mean, duke that out.
Oh, I didn't know that because I've heard he and lots of people say that he's trying to be silenced, but I haven't heard anyone say how until you mentioned that. I didn't know that.
Well, the silencing stuff is minuscule at that. I mean, they took down a Theo Von podcast and something else, and but at the same time, like, if RFK Jr. and Theo Von, let's just zone in on that, for example, if they get together and have a podcast for 2 hours, I'm not walking away from that podcast going, that was an intellectual dispute between.
Oh, yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like,
I'm super biased towards RFK Jr. in particular because I've only seen short videos of people criticizing him. I haven't actually heard any of these long podcasts that he's done.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. He just came out of nowhere, and it's like, here's this guy and he's bad, don't listen to him. Or here's this guy and he's good and he's got all this stuff, you should listen to him. It's like, okay, wait a minute. There's just too much information. Why is this being shoved in my face? Why is he on every podcast?
Mm-hmm. What's that, Dusty?
I've heard both. Like, both people praising him, both people condemning him. There's usually when you're going to have someone that says a lot of controversial things, there's not going to be somebody that's on the fence about that guy, typically.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of these two camps that either praise them because they're owning the libs or something, or condemning them for the opposite reason.
Yeah, like RFK Jr. is either responsible for the deaths of millions of people, or he's a noble truth teller and he's trying to save us from the evil deep state.
Yeah, But the question I have for that guy is like, why is he climbing in the polls right now as a Democratic candidate?
I think it's.
I don't know.
I think it's like maybe similar to Trump in some ways, in that he really doubled down on taking advantage of the internet culture, and like I think RFK Jr. is doing that, and especially when it comes to all the stuff to do with the vaccines, that he's doubling down on the conspiracy theories to do with, like, there's differences in between in terms of that issue in particular too. Like there are people who are just vaccine hesitant perhaps or something, but don't believe that there's a conspiracy to prevent people from taking ivermectin or push the vaccines down people's throats or anything like that. And you go all the way from that to saying to RFK Jr. said that basically he said that it's a bioweapon, a Chinese bioweapon.
I think there's a lot of noise there too. I think I don't know, I was thinking about this, and what are the similarities between a Trump-like figure and an RFK Jr.-like figure, right?
Well,
Both
Trump
of these guys
was also a
are
conspiracy theorist as well.
Yeah, true.
That's true.
I think both of these guys are viewed between their parties as, or just in the public as general, as rich guys that are, bulls in China shops. Trump, for example, if he's going to get in there, he's going to drain the swamp, which he really didn't do. But I think people overlook democracy or this system, even up here in Canada. This system is fucking broken. It needs to be fixed, and there's no good candidates for us to pick. So why not just have this guy that's going to go in and just fuck everything up once he gets in there? And I think that's why RFK Jr. is gaining in popularity as much as he is. It doesn't have to do so much as the conspiracy theories that he's touting. I just think people are just voting for somebody that's just going to get in there and just say, fuck you guys, and just I'm going to do stuff totally different because the system doesn't work well to begin with.
Oh, okay. So like
I
because
just don't think he's stable.
He seems like anti-establishment.
Yeah, both of them are like, okay, for RFK Jr., right? He views FBI, CIA as all those people murdering his father and his uncle. He's not a fan of government. He's not a fan of the healthcare system, obviously, in the United States or any of that stuff, right? So people kind of view this guy as going in there and not like DeSantis, for example. I think a lot of Republicans view DeSantis as a shitty candidate just because he's going to go in there and just kowtow to whatever the military industrial complex tells him to do or whatever, right? Or if Senate says do this,
and seemingly evangelical Christians too,
or whatever, right? He's just going to be like the normie, and the same would have gone with the Clintons. As soon as they get in power, they're just going to go with the same old status quo. Nothing ever gets changed. You know what I mean? And I think people are just tired of that shit. I think they view democracy as just kind of dead. And if Big Bird is a candidate right now, fuck it, let's vote for him because he's just going to get in there. And you know what I mean? Like, yeah, why not? You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah,
that's the only comment because he's gaining the poll. RFK Jr. is gaining the polls right now, and Trump was once president. What's the common thing between both of those guys? It's like there's a lot of dissimilarities between them, but the common thing is like these guys are going to get in there. They're just going to be shitty, and they're going to cause the system to be even more shitty than it is. And if it's more shitty than it is, maybe it collapses and we come up with something new.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like if RFK Jr. does become president, it'll be similar to Trump in that he'll tout himself as an establishment candidate, but govern not much like that at all.
Yeah, or the same thing, like everybody thought that Trump was going to get in there and change everything, but then Trump got in there. He didn't free Assange. He didn't drain the swamp. He didn't, you know what I mean? Like he didn't build the wall. Not like it's like that Joe Rogan thing that he always kind of jokes around. Like they sit him down in a room and say, okay, here's the Kennedy assassination. This could happen to you if you don't follow what we tell you to do, right?
Yeah.
And I think that RFK Jr. would be the same thing. If he got voted in president, yeah, he's going to go in there. He's going to fucking crazily fuck shit up and destroy this democracy and bring it in and so it's working. No, he's not. He's going to do with whatever his party tells him to do, you know.
I think
Dust, do you have your camera on?
Well, I was gonna say is the problem is that people have all these expectations of the president and what they can do. And then
100%.
we look back at like Trump and what he did while he was in office, and we look at Biden, there's a shitload of constraints like that are on these heads of state. It's not like they can just go in and do whatever the fuck they want. They make a lot of promises, and oftentimes those promises aren't fulfilled, and that has nothing to do with them being a candidate. It's just their impossibilities. And that's a problem with a lot of these wild card people. It's like they promise the moon, but the system doesn't allow that moon to come into fruition. So it's like I hear these pie in the sky people. I was like, these guys are pretty ridiculous. Yeah, it would be great, but they're not even telling us how they're going to do that within the system. And that's kind of the big problem that I have. It's like, okay, so yeah, you're making these promises, but how are you going to actually do these things? That's the biggest issue I have. Is if you're able to find out how to do this thing plausibly, then hey, I can get on with you. But if you're just saying all these things and then, just to say them, just so people will vote for you, and then you kind of throw your hands in the air once you're in office, and it's like, what's the point in voting them in at that point?
Yeah, there's a lot of bureaucracy. It's probably really thick, and by the time you get even through a quarter of it, boom, your term is done, and some other guy's going to take over, right? So
yeah, definitely.
I don't know.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, you could look at this conspiracy theorists in general, and the increasing popularity in terms of something similar to why, like, Alex Jones and Tim Pool, for example, switched from actual reporting to just being commentator, because that's tremendously more popular and way easier and less expensive to do, and people on the internet like that a lot more because it's more simple and easy to understand and easy to use to increase political polarization.
Yeah, and most people are brainless, and when they get together at tea parties or dinner parties, they just want to quote the coolest thing that the last guy said, and I don't know, you know what I mean? If you want to be a contrarian, I guess Tim Pool is your guy to go to have an opposite view on, I don't know. Again, there's another example of, like, why is this guy so popular? Like, this guy, I remember Tim Pool was on Vice, for crying out loud, and now the guy, like, he has like
the people who get super emotional. I think Tim Pool's a super emotional guy, but he's always, Civil War's coming, and trying to tell people and get them angry. Those are usually the people. Like, we've learned some things from the algorithm. We know that what the algorithm seeks to make more profit is outrage. So if you monger outrage, then you're going to make more profit. That's the thing that I see a lot in common with a lot of these people, is that their messages aren't saying, let's all come together and solve this problem in a practical way. No, most of them don't say that.
No.
They just are there to get people angry without kind of a solution in which they're getting them angry about.
Yeah. Can you believe this shit? You should be very angry about it.
Right.
Yeah. That's just human nature, though, and being cynical. Like, do you know Chris Williamson is? He's the
I think
Rogan.
Yeah, I think I've seen him a little bit.
He was talking about this the nicest hotel in the world thing. Anyway, the nicest hotel in the world is where you stay, and everything is like the best, right? You have the best meal, the towels are fucking crisp, you have the best shower in your life. You stay there for a night, and it's amazing. But after 2 nights, 3 nights, after a week, you notice that the maid that comes in, she didn't make your bed that night on Tuesday. You know what I mean? Over time, you start to criticize even the best things in the world, right? You can stay at $1 million hotel room and have the best service on earth. But then, by after day 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you're going to notice that, well, maybe the salad that they brought up didn't have a lot of tomatoes in it. There was too much dressing. You know what I mean? Us as humans, after, we just complain about everything pretty much all the time. And we're very cynical creatures, and mostly because, we fought for our meals as hunter-gatherers and tribes for hundreds of thousands of years, and life was fucking really tough and shitty, right? That's why we're really cynical about everything like that. But I think like the mentality so applies to like a Tim Pool, where you're like living in the greatest time to be alive ever, right? You can order a pizza while people are doing heroin in the middle of the street, but yet, you're complaining about, right-wing or Democrats putting it for the bill that's not going to move the needle at all for anybody. You know what I mean? It's just like, is this part of just the human nature, and we just like to complain about shit as human beings from time to time?
Yeah. Well, and in terms of conspiracy theories too, another reason that people have a tendency towards believing those is that they're easy explanations that tell an interesting story and provide an answer for all the questions. Whereas in reality, there are questions that don't have answers. And yeah, like that's part of our changing culture too, that we have things so good that it's we're seeking forms of stress because we don't have to struggle like we used to as hunter gatherers, and we're just getting outraged by Twitter. Whereas, like you said, we can get outraged on Twitter while eating a pizza and watching TV in an air conditioned house.
Yeah. We're overloaded with information too, and I think that's why being a conspiracy theorist, or like, I don't even know what it is to be like, I don't know. I feel like if I were to go to talk to somebody, if I were to go grab somebody down the street and just talk to them and have a normal conversation, that person would definitely think I'm a conspiracy theorist.
Right.
Just because I've gone down so many rabbit holes, and I've got so many different opinions on stuff, and I can change those opinions at any time. But there's so many conspiracy theories and so much information. You can, if whatever narrative you want, and going back to what you were saying, Andrew, about algorithm kind of being, you know what I mean, putting you in your own silo. I think a lot of us get caught in that, where we're being fed just this, you know what I mean, constant nonsense all the time, and then we're grabbing those little points of data, and then we're fucking dying on those hills. So even though it has nothing to do with us whatsoever, and
Yeah,
I
definitely.
have, like, from my previous experience as a conspiracy theorist, there's like another factor why I stopped being that way, and another factor was just information fatigue and outrage fatigue. Because oftentimes, I would get angry at all of these things that had zero to no impact on my life. So
Right.
it was just kind of creating unnecessary stress and anxiety, worrying about things like, oh, is FEMA trying to create death camps, or all these outlandish theories that I was into. And I was like, why am I getting so worked up on this shit when none of this shit is ever going to affect me in like 100 years or my children?
Yeah, exactly.
So it was just, I would get fatigued and I could imagine like people who keep following this stuff, eventually might have some type of high anxiety issues, or they kind of just stay on this outrage cycle, stay angry at everything. And I don't know, I kind of worry for these people's blood pressures in the future if they continue to, keep on that angle.
Yeah.
It's stressing to have to worry about like these crazy theories, especially when you believe them,
Oh yeah.
That's the hard part, when you actually believe these crazy theories, and you believe that the CIA might show up on your doorstep. I have, a friend who developed schizophrenia. I don't believe it's because he was a conspiracy theorist, but oftentimes he was afraid of like the CIA or the FBI wiretapping him, and being paranoid about all that stuff. I can't imagine that that's good for your health. As far as like strength and anxiety goes. And there's probably people who already are prone to anxiety and mental health issues. And once you inject these types of things into their lives, it seems that they tend to spiral out if they don't get back on the right track.
I think you're right.
Most
Yeah.
of these people that shoot places up are the types of people that don't have control over their mental capacities, and then they're being fed like conspiracy theories. Like most of these crazy mass shooters have some type of conspiracy theory that they've adopted or believed in, and believe that it was an existential threat to society and they had to act on it, like many of these crazy people. So I guess that's one of the problems, but you can't always say that anything you put out there, you have to think of, oh, what are crazy people going to do when they hear this theory?
Yeah.
So there's kind of like a double-edged sword when it comes to free speech. Like, yeah, I can say whatever I want, but then what happens when a crazy person goes and acts on that and kills some people?
Yeah.
I'm
That's a
assuming the
difficult
person
question.
who I would say that the person should be allowed to do that, but it would be bad if the person who did that didn't learn a lesson about what type of information they could throw out there and what type of effects they can have in the
Yeah.
real world.
Yeah. And you have, we've seen different responses to this too. For example, we saw the massive lawsuits against Alex Jones for the Sandy Hook stuff. And we see, what was the other one? Oh, yeah, we see that Trump, he's been held responsible for January 6th to the point that he got arrested recently, which is a huge bombshell. And then we have people like Tim Pool and Tucker Carlson, for example, who with whom mass shooters have said that they were inspired by them, and like the difference in the consequences is interesting. And obviously, they're responsible for different things. But yeah, I think people should be to allowed to say that sort of stuff too, even if it's totally wrong. But yeah, you should think about how crazy people are going to react to what you're saying, because people, like mentally unhealthy people, like you were saying, Dusty, will take this to a crazy place and go do mass shootings, which obviously happens with uh, a tiny, minuscule percentage of people's audiences, though. To That's important to mention.
Right. Yeah, it's just a kind of, and when I'm thinking of all these like conspiracy theorists and things like that, like they're falling into the like I can't say that what they espouse is altruistic in any sense of the word. They're not trying to do a service, in my opinion. A lot of it has to do with, what is the media environment and what drives it. We know the kind of saying, if it bleeds, it leads. And the conspiracy theorists are kind of doing the same thing. They're working on human psychology in a way that piques anxiety, angst, anger, and upset and outrage, and using that to like move forward with their shows. Like but just thinking about it, um, if that is the angle of what you're trying to push at all times, like what is the motive? Like I know even if you're not even able to make that profitable, imagine how many views you can get for saying something outlandish and because we know we're kind of in the day and age where people don't give a shit about what it is they put out there. The only thing they care about is how many people will see it.
Yeah.
We're kind
Yeah,
of in that
like
day and age.
look at all that
Where,
personal shit that like public influencers and YouTubers have gotten into, for example, too. Like all that shit with Steven Crowder's divorce, and when everyone was interviewing Kanye when he was having like a fucking mental breakdown and going crazy and supporting Nazis and shit.
yeah, so it's kind of at the level where people, well, I guess when it comes to younger people, they don't give a shit about their reputations.
Yeah.
they're willing to burn their reputation for 15 minutes of fame.
Mm-hmm.
But those who are able to sustain it, I think they're sustaining it particularly for a reason. Like, if Tim Pool just like stopped doing outrage shows and just focused on like the good things that people are doing in his community, I have some serious doubts that he would have the audience that he has today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be. I think you'd be hard pressed to find anyone who has a big audience who does that.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
kind of why I like watching local news, because they're going to cover things like that too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't need to see, who got shot today and what corner. They kind of have to balance the anxiety with some moments of humanity that, hey, you don't have to be depressed about humanity. There's like things that people do that are really good too.
Mm-hmm.
And I know these good things probably don't get a lot of views, but we need to make sure that people are aware that, hey, there's
Yes.
people that are doing good here in society. Let's highlight that too.
Yeah, definitely.
People doing good in society doesn't sell newspapers, unfortunately, though.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So that's why I like my local news, because they'll do that. They'll cover both sides of the human equation. Like, if we're looking at bad news all the time, I feel that it doesn't have a good impact on human psychology. There's definitely has to be some type of.
Yeah,
So I
like
think
similar, like getting outraged by social media all day, right?
Yeah, it's going to have some type of psychological impact. And I
Yeah.
think in order to balance those things out, you do have to consume like stories that aren't negative, stories that are about someone triumphing, helping the poor. Those are the things that I see all the time in the local news. You go on YouTube, maybe you have Mr. Beast as an exception of someone who's like helping people out. He's like one of the sole exceptions.
Yeah.
He happens to be the most popular YouTuber, but he also is kind of changing the landscape, hopefully in a more positive way. I guess the only problem with Mr. Beast is people trying to say, or it could be part of his thing that, oh, he's only doing good stuff for people because it gets some clicks. I was like, well, I don't think that's the only reason. That might be part of it, but I don't think his sole reason is, let me help this guy here and give him the opportunity to like fix his car or something because I want clicks. I think he kind of has a dual motive. Like, okay, this will get clicks, but this is going to help somebody out.
Yeah, I mean, you could do way easier things for clicks, as we were talking about, right?
Right. So I don't know. We'll have to see. I do see Mr. Beast as a positive influence amongst younger people who are apolitical, but that's kind of it when it comes to people doing positive things to help people and highlighting that in humanity. And Mr. Beast seems to be the few conduits that's able to impact the younger demographic. Because I don't personally really watch them, but I do see that, even my local news stories have covered some stories regarding Mr. Beast and doing like charity work and stuff like that. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, even if he's doing good things for people for the sake of money, I'm not sure I see that as a totally bad thing.
Right, at least the output is good, he's helping somebody. I'm guessing that help will have a good impact on the people who are viewing the content psychologically, as well as the person that's being helped. Because it seems like if we're just going to consume content where they try to highlight a particular group and say these people are bad, and then escalating that and escalating that and escalating that. I don't think that's going to be a good thing psychologically for our culture.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so do you think you would have been even more of a conspiracy theorist if you were getting into that shit in today's culture, Dusty? Because I know it was a while ago when you were into that stuff, right?
Yeah, so this is like pre-YouTube. Like, this is before YouTube existed. Like, I got out of conspiracies before YouTube was even a thing.
Okay.
Because I think I pretty much got out of them like in 2003 or 4, somewhere around there. So I was like all into the 9/11 conspiracies and you name it. I probably had some type of belief in it. I don't think I would have believed in flat Earth. There were a bunch of wackier ones that I didn't believe in, but yeah, I think it's much easier now because I had to really hunt for information regarding conspiracy theories. It wasn't like readily available. I had to listen to like these crazy AM talk shows that started at midnight. And those
did you mention, for example, that Art Bell show that Joe Rogan has mentioned before that he used to listen to? Right.
Yeah, so like I had to listen to Art Bell, and his show didn't come on till like 11 or 12 at night. So you wouldn't hear the crazy unless you were staying up pretty late. And so that wasn't like, to me, it was like being a nerd in the 80s. Being a nerd in the 80s wasn't cool. It was a very small group of people. That's kind of like what it was to be like a conspiracy theorist in the late 90s. It was just a small group of people who were insular, and everybody thought they were crazy. And then it became mainstream once you had Alex Jones, his show on the internet, and like all of these theories making the rounds,
I think the Vid19 stuff has ramped up the popularity of conspiracy theories even more than was the case before then.
Well, I think just YouTube in general, just the accessibility of getting the information. Because back then, like the websites that you'd have to go to find out these theories or read about them, they were like super janky. They were like unprofessional looking, like the worst looking websites that you've ever seen designed.
Oh, okay. Yeah, now you can watch you can watch infinite YouTube videos about conspiracy theories all day long and night anywhere you want to.
Right. So there wasn't and in order to get my fill, like I had to subscribe and pay money to like the radio show because you'd either have to watch it on air when it aired, or in order to get access to their archive of shows, you'd have to pay them a subscription fee, which I did.
Oh, okay.
Because I wanted access to any of the guests' previous shows at any time.
Okay.
Yeah, that led me on a wild ride, but it wasn't a mainstream thing at all. Because you'd talk about these things and nobody would know what the fuck you were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really mainstream now. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's crazy how mainstream it is now. And that's worrying a bit for me because these things are easy to get captured in. They're easy, they're fun to get captured in, but man, they can screw you up if you actually take these types of things to heart.
Yeah. I think people should look for exciting stories in fiction. That's a good thing to do if you want to avoid getting stressed out by social media and stuff too.
Right. So I don't know. I think I was lucky that I got into it when it was a small niche and insular group, as opposed to now where there's a lot more support for these types of ideas and things.
Yeah.
Reddit really wasn't a thing back then.
Oh,
You
okay.
just had to go to these weird websites and forums and in order to discuss these things with other people. No social media back then, so
Yep.
it was a lot more difficult.
Yep. Now, literally anyone can start a YouTube channel and say anything they want to, and you can watch like infinite conspiracy theorists on every conspiracy theory. For example, I think there are probably tons and tons of flat earthers, and
Yeah, it's a lot more easy to propagate a lie and have more people believe it.
mhm.
It's just much easier because you have social media to spread things around. I know one is, what was it, the litter box in the kids' classroom?
Yeah, that Joe Rogan was talking about, and it turned out it was total bullshit, pun intended.
Yeah. So, things like that can make their rounds and make their rounds so much so that, like, I think there was somebody in a state Congress that took that issue to the Congress floor and started talking about it. Jesus Christ. It's
Right.
not even a real thing.
Right.
So these things can be dangerous when people of authority are saying these things are true.
Yeah, definitely.
Very hard.
My favorite one was birds as surveillance drones.
Oh yeah.
That was a fake. That was intentionally fake.
Was it?
Like, yeah, the guy that started that conspiracy theory did it on purpose as a social experiment.
Oh, okay.
So he knew.
So he's a troll.
Yeah, basically, yeah, he was a troll. I think because he got interviewed by the New York Times, and he kind of spilled the beans about that. The whole thing. It was like, okay, so the guy was just trolling people.
That's funny. Was like I think I
birds
heard.
Aren't real.
I think I heard. Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. I think I heard Eddie Bravo say the craziest one he thinks is that trees aren't real.
Oh man. It's exhausting, man. It kind of captures your life, like when you really get into those things. And like I would tell my friends, and my friends would just think I was a nut job. I was trying to explain these things to them.
You guys just don't know the truth.
Something not right with you, buddy. Yeah. Just kind of crazy.
Mark Andreessen was on Joe Rogan the other day, and he said one that was interesting. It was like we've skipped a few 100 years. Like we all think that we're in the year 2023 or whatever, but maybe we probably missed 100 years in there somewhere. Or who knows, right? Like the year 1200. 200 and or 1223, did that really happen? That, you know what I mean? Like some of that stuff is like, did we skip a few millennia?
Yeah. That's in terms
of a good premise for a fiction story, but
yeah,
you shouldn't be just like dropping that on people.
I mean, in terms of historical records and stuff, it could be possible that we're not exactly right about what year it is, but it's probably not thousands of years in the future or thousands of years in the past. That reminds me of The Matrix. Morpheus says you believe it is the year 1999, when in reality it's closer to the year 2199.
Yeah. Like, yeah, they really, is every year really accounted for since after. Well, the Gregorian calendar that we use right now in 2023 is based off of Christianity and Jesus's death, right? Did we really account for every year AD after that, right?
And
Like,
it
does
didn't
somebody really
account
have
for
an
any of the years
historical?
before that either, right?
Yeah, did somebody really
BC.
write down what happened in the year 580 AD to 590 AD in that decade there? Sure, right? Maybe there's a few things, but who's accounting for every day that took place? So.
Yeah. I don't know about that.
We might be in the year like 968 or whatever. Who knows, right? We might be missing a few hundred years.
Yeah.
When I was
So there is a
conspiracy
kernel.
theorist, I used to think that the world was going to end in the year 2012.
Oh, you used to believe that one?
Wasn't that
I
based on the
believe that
Mayan
one.
calendar or something like that? Like the Mayans
Yeah,
predicted that it was going to be 2012?
I think
Yeah,
so.
based off of the Mayan calendar.
Yeah. A lot of that can be like, I don't know. I question some of that stuff. So I again, if you were to ask anybody off the street, yeah, I'm definitely a conspiracy theorist. But even 9/11, right? So 9/11, I have a lot of questions about that. Does that really make me a conspiracy theorist? I don't know what I don't believe what the official record.
It depends on what you're questioning.
Well, I'm just
Like
questioning.
if you're talking, like a lot of people. Well, I know Tower 7's a weird mystery,
Right.
but people saying that jet fuel won't bring on a steel building are people that are just don't know how physics work.
Yeah, for me that like it would be as fast as the military kind of acted after that went into the Gulf War. Or no, sorry, that wasn't the Gulf War after 2001. It was
Iraq
Well, I think
and
Bush
Afghanistan.
basically just wanted to go back in there. He just kind of used that as I don't think he planned it, but he definitely used it as a jumping off
No, I
point.
don't think he planned it either. And I don't really know how I feel about the third building that, like I'm not that far down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, but I do question, did the military industrial complex really have anything to do with no planes intercepting that day, for example, or yeah, I don't know. The buildings falling as fast as they did. I don't know. There's a lot of questions that I just have about that day, just that day in general. And I have a lot of questions even about COVID Decepticons or whatever. Right? So does that still make me a conspiracy theorist?
Well,
I think
we
like
got to compare
I think
our responses now too, because back then when 9/11 happened, nothing like that ever happened before. Like there's never been an instance where 4 American jets have been hijacked and that they were going to be targeting, some significant sites. Now, if we get recent, I think recently there was like a Cessna that flew near Washington, D.C., and immediately they dispatched fighter jets, like right away.
Okay.
So, like when it happens now, those fighter jets are there right away.
Is that because of 9/11?
Mainly, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, probably. And you know what, that happens a lot throughout history. It's not often that it's like once we fuck up and we realize, oh, that was a huge mistake, then we fault it afterwards. You find this a lot in aviation history in general, right? People were allowed to smoke on planes and do whatever, and then kids. I think some kid died on a plane or something like that, and then the TSA was formed, and then you had the whole metal detectors before you went on a plane and checking the flaps and all that kind of stuff, right? Like it's unfortunately somebody has to die or a tragic event has to happen for us to course correct and then make it some kind of safety thing that we implement in the future. So that kind of stuff that makes sense to me. But I just where's all that footage of the Pentagon from that day? I don't know. I just have questions about 9/11 in general. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, like I live near the Pentagon. There's stuff. The reason there's not a lot of footage is because the Pentagon's a freaking top secret building. So they don't really want people to have a bunch of footage of the place. Like there's a lot of footage of the other site of 9/11, like the Twin Towers. It's just that any footage around the Pentagon just gets confiscated right away because of the nature of what's in there.
I suppose that makes sense. Yeah, I think like what you were saying, Dusty. I think that the American government, like the Bush administration and the military-industrial complex, capitalized on the tragedy of 9/11 and exploited it for their own personal gain, for the military companies to make money, and for politicians to gain more power and stuff. I don't believe any sort of conspiratorial explanation that the government was actually involved or anything like that. And no, 9/11 itself was one of those conspiracies that proved to be true, in the sense that there was a conspiracy of 19 hijackers who took some planes and threw them into buildings.
It's not that they were involved. It's a lot of the time for me, it's incompetence, right? So for that
Oh
whole
yeah,
9/11
for sure.
Iraq war,
Yeah.
it was weapons of mass destruction. Saddam
Yeah.
Hussein has them. We sent all these, and none of that ended up being true at all, right? And that was supposedly based on good intel that the Pentagon had, and that was a conspiracy theory. It's just
Yep.
a mild one, right? But the Americans fought a war over that, right? So for that, based on bad, I just like, again, it's just, I chalk more of this stuff up to malice and just humans being idiots more.
Yeah,
than,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
There's that I love that saying from Mixed Mental Arts. I think it was Hamlin's razor. Do not attribute to malice that which can be attributed to ignorance.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I fucked up my words, obviously, but yeah, so it was September 11th. It's not like I feel like there's a cabal of elites of like 500 people in a room that got together and planned this all out. It was probably
And they're shape-shifting lizard people in a cigar smoke-filled room.
September 11th happened, and the military-industrial complex probably, and corporations within that sold, tanks and that kind of stuff, for example, that had to profit greatly from that, had some kind of, don't let a good crisis go to waste is the common phrase that people use. And I think that for September 11th, that obviously happens, either mildly or greatly, but yeah, these conspiracy theories are bound to happen because governments are at play. There's institutions that are doing shady things, and there's just so much that the public is not, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. When the press secretary for Biden administration, she comes out and she says her daily briefing, how much is she really telling you the truth out of that whole entire thing, right? So
probably not much. I'd say probably, regardless of who the president is and who the press secretary is, there probably isn't that much truth being said.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's R or D. It's
Go ahead, Dusty.
Secretary might not even know that much, to be honest.
Yeah, that could be true also.
Yeah, but it's easy. This is how conspiracy theories start, though. When you're just fed nothing but bullshit and lies and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Hogwash. It's all like scripted, too, and you're not getting any truth from these people. Like, if you had an actual, like, press secretary that's in front of and just answered everything with 100% transparency, I think it would be easier. You would have less conspiracy theories these days. You probably have a more chaotic system, and people have less and less faith than they do now. But yeah, I sometimes wonder why we play the games that we play. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and like you were saying, sometimes responses to things are just mistakes because they amp up support for conspiracy theories. Like, all this praise of Fauci, for example, with the Decepticon stuff, and demonizing anyone who is not necessarily crazy, but just hesitant and has questions about the vaccines and stuff like that, treating them all like they're equally Alex Jones type of people. Definitely, that all ramped up the support for conspiracy theories centered around that, I think.
Yeah, I don't think you can, like, I don't know. if you look at COVID with a huge blanket of nuance, I don't think nobody walked out of that not being a conspiracy theorist. I mean, if you were pro-vax, let's say, and you got your 8th jab and you're going to get your 9th and 10th booster tomorrow, you know what I mean? We would look at that and be like, okay, maybe
I don't know. I was saying
that.
I was saying to
exactly,
Dusty.
That's it. What is?
I was saying to Dusty before we started that RFK Jr. wants me to get infinite vaccines.
Well, I'm just saying, like, from somebody who is a stockholder in all these vaccine companies, I didn't see huge profits when because I actually purchased a bunch of stock before any of these vaccines even came out, and to all of the companies that were making them, and like the stock prices didn't go up significantly. Like the most money I've made on the stock market is from Facebook. And that's because Facebook took a huge hit like a few years ago. They lost a shit ton of money, and then I bought it up when they were at their lowest, and they made it all back and then some. I was like, holy shit.
Oh, okay.
So whenever you hear a company doing shit, go buy some of their stock. That's the moral of the story.
Okay.
But yeah, I didn't see any significant gains from my Moderna, Pfizer, J&J. Like none of those stocks like performed well. They just kind of performed average.
Plus also the since the vaccines are being given to people for free, even in the US, if I understand correctly, then the pharma companies are not profiting off of it as much as from other medications, like alternative things like ivermectin, and then also the like that guy that I think he's a microbiologist, is he, on Debunk the Funk, was saying that yes, big pharma approves the FDA, the FDA and the big pharma are tied together, in that when big pharma has to get approved by the FDA, the FDA is funded by big pharma, but big pharma rejects something like 90% of medication applications too. So that doesn't mean that it doesn't seem like there's actually that much of a financial bias if the majority of the medications do not get approved.
All right. Yeah,
gotcha. But okay,
big pharma, so it's a very nuanced conversation. You know,
for sure.
You can't just
overall blanket statement that.
Go ahead, Chris.
Blanket statement. Do you think that any big pharma, they didn't profit at all during COVID?
Oh, of course they did. I mean,
yeah, that would be that's all I leave it at, is that Johnson & Johnson, I would think, profited some way through COVID. Moderna profited some way through COVID, even if your stock in your pocket.
Moderna is a new company, so they're a new company, so they just sustain themselves. Johnson & Johnson's a fucking gigantic company.
Yeah, because they're tied in with Procter and Gamble or the huge.
Yeah, they're huge. Yeah. That's why when I bought the J&J, I was like, man, this stock isn't doing shit, and I never sold any of it. I still have all my Moderna, Pfizer, and J&J stock, but they are not well-performing stocks that I have.
So Dusty, if someone were hearing this right now, some conspiracy theorists would definitely say, "What are you talking about? You guys shouldn't be believed. You're corporate chills for big pharma."
What do you mean?
Because you own stock in Johnson &
Here's
Johnson.
The thing. Everybody that complains about the corporations has access to the same system.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, I'm not saying that these people should get away with it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying if you have access to the system at hand, go ahead and use it. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, I have stock in these companies, and I'm not saying that these are good companies. I know that, hey, these are investments, and I want these companies to perform well. But these investments aren't based off of like my moral compass or anything. This is just based off of what everybody does in the stock market,
Right.
which
I
is
was
you
just
buy
kidding,
low
man.
and sell high. I know, man.
Yeah.
My general point was that that if you were paying attention to COVID with conspiracy theories, to say that pharma didn't benefit from it, you know what I mean? I don't know.
They
Somebody
Oh, I
probably
mean,
did.
yeah, like I wasn't saying that that big pharma doesn't benefit from it. I think you'd be hard pressed to find anyone who says that big pharma didn't benefit from it at all. But
Mhm.
a lot of vaccine hesitant and anti-vaxxer people are acting like the the vaccines were only approved due to the financial corruption of the FDA by big pharma. And I would say there probably is some corruption, but I wouldn't say like the vaccines were actually very thoroughly tested, and that was one of the reasons that they were approved. And like, so it doesn't seem like the vaccines in particular are something that are involved with that much nefarious shit with big pharma and FDA in comparison to other drugs.
Yeah, like the huge
Yeah.
markups on insulin, and that guy that went to jail for marking up the epinephrine, EpiPens. There's definitely product capture, and the prices over here in the United States will be completely ridiculous for some medicines that you guys probably get 10 cents on the dollar that we got to pay for.
Mhm.
That's definitely due to corruption over here in the U.S.
Yeah, from insurance companies.
Right. And
Mhm.
that's what sucks about U.S. healthcare is that insurance companies exist.
Yep.
I'm not saying they shouldn't exist. I'm just saying they shouldn't be the only option for somebody. I'd rather have, hey, you can get insurance for like out of the ordinary shit, but if you have routine things that happens to a lot of people, say, hey, I broke my arm, that happens to a lot of people. I shouldn't need insurance, so I can get back to work.
That makes
You
sense.
know,
I
it should
think
be something that.
the healthcare system here, it definitely needs some improvements, but I think it's good because it's mostly public, but then there are private options if you want to pay a lot more to, like, for example, see a specialist sooner than you would otherwise.
Right. Because at least you have
Yeah, I
the
guess it
option to see a
depends on what type
specialist.
of it depends
Yeah.
on what type of healthcare that you want to get, right? Like to get an MRA
Mhm.
right now, where I am, is like a 6-month wait.
Oh,
Well, can't you just go into an emergency room and get one?
Yeah, I guess so, but I mean,
You can say, oh, I ran face first into a bus and now I'm feeling the effects of a concussion. Can you
yeah, you
please
can cut off your
MRI
arm.
me?
A little extreme to get your medical treatment, though.
No, I've done
Again,
something similar, man. I've went and gotten like CRT and MRI scans, and the only issue was I ate a shit ton of black Oreos. It's like, oh, my shit is
yeah,
black. That must mean your digestive system must be totally fucked up. So they did a bunch of scans on me, but I was like, oh yeah, I ate a bunch of Oreos. That's probably why I have black as fuck shit. So sorry for wasting your guys' time. I'm out. I didn't have to pay for it, luckily, because I was on the state insurance. Imagine me
Okay.
having to pay for that shit. If I had to pay for that, that's probably would have been like thousands of dollars.
Yeah, yeah.
But I have to actually get out of here because I'm about to get off.
Okay.
And someone's
Yeah, I know
ringing my
I know
bell.
you had to go pretty soon. All right, well, yeah, we pretty much talked about all or most of the aspects of conspiracy theories. So, yeah, thanks for talking. Fun as always, and yeah, thanks for suggesting this topic, Chris. And yeah, let's do another chat about some topic or something like that sometime soon, or we could do a movie too. But I know it seems like you prefer to talk about like actual topics and stuff, Chris. So yeah, we can think of something to do or something in the media or something. I think we both don't follow politics as much as we used to, so we can talk about something, you know, more substantial or interesting, like this, like conspiracy theories in general.
Yeah, I've really tried to stay out of the cult. I mean, it's hard not to stay out of the culture war bullshit that goes on these days. It's so in your face, and
Yeah,
the culture is what it is. But yeah, I try to stay out of it. But yeah, I'm more interested in the big questions, like what's going on, who's controlling this stuff, is it actually ever going to change? Are we kind of stuck where we are? What's 50 years going to be like? Is AI going to wipe us all out? I don't know. There's like a whole bunch of stuff we could talk about for sure. So.
yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, we'll have to think about something else to talk about soon.
And yeah,
Yeah.
movies. I definitely the shitty thing for me is like there's no good movies that have come out recently for me to
Oh
like.
yeah.
All the good movies that I like are like going back to like the '90s or early 2000s. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of the ones that I like too. Yeah. All
yeah,
right. Well, yeah, thanks again for talking, man. And
yeah.
thanks again, everyone, for watching. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Smash the like button or make sweet love to it or do anything you want to it. And click that bell to be notified when I come out with new videos. I think the next one I'm going to do will be I'm going to release a clip from the video in which I was discussing the philosopher Slavoj Žižek's opinion on how he thinks that the Nazis used sort of leniency in Kant's categorical imperative to justify their Nazi atrocities. So check out that one too. And also check out my Patreon page. The link is in the description as always. And like I always say, most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all, and groove is in the heart. And the role of conspiracy theorists in culture is fascinating, and people are way too into conspiracy theories nowadays. But their role in the culture is definitely fascinating. All right, anything else you want to say before we end it there, Chris?
No, yeah. Have a good one. Be nice to each other.
All right. Thanks again, everyone, and adios until next time.